The story starts when Eddie is curled up, sitting on a floor, reading an English book. He is very focused, and suddenly his mother appears and asks him, "What is he doing here?"
Eddie, why are you still reading this garbage, huh? Why?
"It's one of my father's books," he said. "Reading this makes me more like them, like the English."
Give it here now.
"No, please. I was not finished. I'm in the middle of the chapter."
English books? Do you think this belongs to you? You think because you have your father's pale skin, you can live inside a dream?
"It's not a dream. Father said it's where we come from. He said I'm a gentleman of the empire. Father always said that I was English. But mother says I can never be an English person. Then who am I? Where shall I belong? I don't care. I'm just Eddie. I'm not the white boy to the servants." Bishan Singh's friend Fazaldin comes to visit him in the asylum. "Bishan, how are you?"
Where is Toba Singh?
"It is where it has always been."
Is it in India or Pakistan? You phitte muh!
"Hey, your time for departure has arrived."
Where is Toba Singh? In India or Pakistan?
पाकिस्तान में?
I have lived in Toba Singh. Now that place doesn't exist. Where do I belong? Where is my home? In India or in Pakistan? What is my identity? How can I go back to my place that doesn't exist anymore for me?
And Bishan Singh dies at the border. What happens when an empire ends, but its effects do not? When borders are redrawn, nations are renamed, and power shifts hands, we often assume that freedom follows. But for many, independence does not bring clarity, it brings confusion. Because colonialism does not always control land, it reshapes identity. Even after it disappears, its impact remains deeply embedded in how people see themselves, where they belong, and who they are allowed to be.
Both Toba Singh by Sadia Hasan Rafa and The Day They Burn the Books by Jean Rhys reveal how colonialism produces fractured and unstable identities that persist even after its political end. Through the characters of Bishan Singh and Eddie, both texts show that the end of empire does not restore identity. Instead, it leaves individuals trapped between worlds, unable to fully belong to either.
In The Day They Burned the Books, Jean Rhys presents colonial identity as something deeply unstable, shaped by imitation but denied recognition. Eddie's attachment to his father's English books reflects more than a personal preference. It reveals how colonial ideology teaches the colonized subject to admire and internalize the culture of the colonizer. Englishness in this context is not just a nationality, it becomes an ideal associated with superiority, refinement, and legitimacy. This dynamic reflects a key post-colonial insight. Colonialism produces what can be understood as mimicry, where the colonized subject attempts to become like the colonizer through language, culture, and behavior. However, this imitation never leads to full acceptance. Eddie's belief that he is English, reinforced by his father, is fundamentally fragile because it depends on recognition from a system that excludes him. When Eddie says that reading his father's books makes him more like them, like the English, this line shows how identity is constructed through cultural consumption. Eddie does not simply inherit Englishness, he tries to perform and learn it. At the same time, the mother's response exposes the limits of this performance. Her insistence that the empire doesn't know you exist reflects the reality that colonial identity is controlled externally, not self-determined. This tension highlights the idea of imitation without belonging. Eddie occupies a space where he is encouraged to aspire to Englishness, yet structurally prevented from achieving it. He is neither fully accepted by the colonizer nor fully at ease in his local environment. As a result, his identity becomes fractured. It is not a simple assertion of individuality, but a response to the collapse of imposed identities. After being positioned between two incompatible worlds, he is left searching for a sense of self that is no longer stable or clearly defined.
In Tobatek Singh, Sadia Hasan Mantu presents that Bishan Singh's identity crisis is not merely psychological, but it is geographical. His inability to locate himself within the newly drawn borders of India or Pakistan serves as a critique of how colonialism and its messy end dismantle an individual's sense of home. For Bishan Singh, identity is strongly bound to land. Before the partition, he was a person with a history, a family, and a specific place, which was Tobatek Singh. However, the bureaucratic decision to exchange lunatics from the asylums based on their religion forces Bishan Singh into a void. This void drives Bishan Singh into a complete loss of his identity, and his gibberish muttering in his Punjabi language became constant in his dialogues. Thus, his nonsensical chanting is often seen as madness. But it represents the breakdown of language, when the physical reality which was his home has been erased. The borders between India and Pakistan were drawn by the colonial powers with little regard for the identities of the people living there. Hence, Bishan Singh's confusion is the direct result of an external power deciding his nationality based on a single metric, which was religion. In the story, when he is told by the officer that his village is in Pakistan, but he as a Sikh must go to India, his identity falls into a deep crisis. He is a man without a country because the country he knew has been replaced by two countries that he cannot recognize. Both his physical and mental state was trapped between the two countries. Therefore, Bishan Singh chooses death over a false identity. By dying on the border of the two countries, he rejects the binary of religion that the post-colonial state tries to force upon him.
Looking at both texts together, we begin to see how colonialism fractures identity in different but connected ways. While The Day They Burn the Books explores identity as something shaped from within through cultural influence, Tobatek Singh, on the other hand, presents identity as something imposed from outside through political force. From here, both texts reveal that identity under colonialism becomes unstable regardless of how it is produced. In Jean Rhys's story, Eddie internalizes English culture and begins to see himself through the lens of the colonizer. His belief that he is English reflects an aspirational identity that depends on recognition from a system that ultimately excludes him. His mother's insistence that he does not belong exposes the limits of this internalized identity.
Mantu's Tobatek Singh presents a situation where identity is not internalized, but forcibly assigned. Bishan Singh does not attempt to redefine himself, yet he is subjected to a system that demands he identified as either Indian or Pakistani. His repeated question, "Where is Tobatek Singh? Where is Tobatek Singh?" highlights the disconnection between imposed identity and lived reality. Despite these differences, both characters arrive at the same condition of displacement. Eddie cannot fully belong to either English or Caribbean identity, while Bishan Singh cannot locate himself within either nation. In both cases, identity is shaped by forces beyond individual control, whether through ideology or political authority. Ultimately, both texts demonstrate that the end of colonial rule does not resolve identity, but leaves individuals caught between systems that fail to accommodate them.
Both The Day They Burned the Books and Tobatek Singh ultimately refuse the idea that the end of colonial rule brings resolution. Instead, they expose how colonialism leaves behind identities that remain fractured, unsettled, and incomplete. In Jean Rhee's story, Eddie's longing to become English reveals how deeply colonial ideology reshapes the self. His belief in Englishness is not simply personal, it is produced by a system that teaches him what to admire while denying him the possibility of belonging. His final desire to just be Eddie does not resolve this conflict. It reveals its depth. Identity for him is no longer something inherited or stable, but something he must struggle to define. In Manto's Tobatek Singh, this instability takes a different form. Bishan Singh is not shaped by aspiration but by loss. His connection to place is rendered meaningless by partition, and his repeated question, "Where is Tobatek Singh?" exposes the failure of national borders to contain lived identity. His final position, lying in the space between India and Pakistan, is not simply tragic. It is symbolic of a world where belonging itself has broken down. What emerges from these both texts is a deeper post-colonial truth. Identity after colonialism is not recovered. It is left in a sense of suspension. Eddie cannot fully become what he has been taught to desire, whereas Bishan Singh cannot remain what he has always been. Both are caught between systems that define them yet refuse to hold them. In this way, colonialism does not end with the departure of the empire. It endures in the identities it has already reshaped, in the borders it has drawn, and in the lives that remain unable to fully belong. And perhaps this is the most unsettling legacy of all. Not just that colonialism changes the world, but that it leaves behind individuals who must continue to live within its unresolved contradictions.
जिस बाजी विच हरिए